The educator Dr. Maria Montessori once said,
"The child developing harmoniously and the adult improving himself at his side make a very exciting and attractive picture."
Welcome to Montessori Education with me, Jesse McCarthy, where we talk raising children and educating students while bettering ourselves right alongside them. Hello, everyone out there. I'm going to get right to it. If you have ever felt overwhelmed, so that's at home with your own children or, in school with a classroom full of other people's children, then this episode is for you. So with me is one of the wisest people I know when it comes to being with children, and especially when it comes to handling any challenges that pop up with children. So for those of you who don't know Ginni Sackett, let me just give you a super brief background. And I'm thinking maybe I'll start with her own wild beginnings with Montessori. And that was, I'm pretty sure it was back in the late 70s. But anyway, she had her own 4-year-old son in a Montessori school. But the interesting thing is, she wasn't the kind of parent that's like, "Oh, I love Montessori. It's the most amazing thing for children." Far from that type of parent. Actually, here's what she said about it. Quote, "I knew nothing about Montessori, paid attention to less. I was a terrible Montessori parent. Didn't attend parent nights, had to be coerced into parent-teacher conferences. They threatened to disenroll my son if I didn't sign up. But I saw an already wonderful child become even more wonderful, and I finally asked, what is this?" Okay, and that experience is what changed Ginni forever. She's been in Montessori since then and has raised a few more children of her own along the way. So 5 in total, 4 boys and 1 girl. And they are now in their 40s. So it gives you a sense of how long Ginni's been in the game here. And those kids have kids of their own. So Ginni has a bunch of grandchildren, I think over a handful. Now, Montessori-wise, she was trained in the 80s. So she's trained with 3 to 6-year-olds, and that's with AMI, and it's Association Montessori Internationale. That's the organization that Maria Montessori originally founded. She has 12 years of experience in the classroom as a teacher. Then she hopped out of the classroom and started teaching teachers. So she has over 20 years doing that as a Montessori trainer. And then she became later the director of pedagogy for AMI. Like that's the whole organization, this international Montessori organization. She was the director of pedagogy, or kind of like education. She is now just running solo. She's doing her own thing, enjoying the good life. Her family, just having a good time. And she says she also does occasional work aiding Montessori teachers and trainers. So Ginni is another one of those Montessori OGs, and I am really glad she's back. So without any, further ado, as they say, let's hop in and get some calm in the chaos. All right, Ginni Sackett, thank you so much for coming back. This is your 3rd time, so happy to have you on again.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so I was talking with you, we were going through it and thinking chaos. So there's a lot of chaos in some classrooms and definitely in some homes. So I want to just start right off with you, whether, recently or way back in the days when you experienced just something chaotic with a kid, whether it was something in the real world that was actually chaotic or it was in your head, like kind of an anxious moment, and it could be a parent or a teacher. So whatever comes to mind on that.
Okay, well, we all deal with chaos. I think we should just acknowledge that and accept it, but it's not where we have to stay. So let me think. So I have 2 thoughts came to my mind. One was as a parent. And you might recall, I knew nothing about Montessori, had no intention to be an educator when I was a new parent. And so I was really playing it by ear. My first child, when he was 3, my second child was born, and it was really going well. He was so excited about her and welcoming her. And I thought, man, we have figured this out. This is great. Until one evening, several months in, I guess he had hit his limit. And he just went crazy. I mean, like full on tantruming, yelling, defiance, behaviors I had never seen in him in any way. And it was panicking. I was as chaotic as he was about it because I had no idea what to do. So that's one thought that comes to my mind. This seeing this completely uncharacteristic flipping out behavior that I had never seen before. And so what do I do?
And how much at that point did you have a lot of Montessori experience? Did you have like this tool belt? I'm going to pull this out, or it was just
I had
you were at a
nothing.
loss?
I had nothing. And that was probably the kind of thing that when I did finally decide that maybe I need to know more, it was just a really gratifying to find an approach to young children that seemed, because one thing, I didn't want to hit them, I didn't want to fall back on those adult behaviors. And so Montessori was going to provide me with different tools, different perspective, different understanding. So then I become a first-year teacher, and lo and behold, I'm, things are not going super well, but I'm a new teacher, so I'm trying to make it all work. I had a 3-year-old in my environment, and she completely out of control, just suddenly out of nowhere, have no idea what sparked it. And there's nothing in my training that's telling me what to do, at least that I could access in that chaotic moment. And so
what is she doing? Like, what's the chaos?
She was yelling, she was hitting out. Like, I think, I was trying to keep her from hurting people, hurting herself. She was when you say chaos, a lot of times the whole point of chaos is that you can't figure, there's nothing logical, there's nothing linear, there's nothing, it's chaotic because you're just trapped in this moment. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just like,
oh yeah. No, and we were talking about it. What's funny is because Ginny, we were talking about before, just to be straight, about I was having some internet troubles at my house. Ginny was saying, oh, this beep's going to pop up. And I was like, you know what? We can't solve it all. Let's just roll with it. And that's kind of like being able to deal with the chaos. Because like, oh, what's this beeping? Or my internet's not that great. So you never know what's going to come up, right? So
right. And that's the whole point of why we want another way to, we're not going to ever avoid chaos. It's going to happen. There are going to be children that suddenly exhibit a behavior, and you may not even have noticed anything that triggered it or sparked it. You might not have any context. This could be a child you just met last week for the first time. And if you stay in the chaos, you become part of it. And that's what the thing I experienced with my son when he did it, was suddenly realizing I have no strategies here other than what I grew up with, which was like, well, this is when you get hit, or this is when you get, somehow punished for your behavior. And so I wanted some other strategies than that. And obviously when I was a teacher, I had to have other strategies than that. So anyway, I feel like one of the first things that gives us a challenge with chaos is that we somehow say this shouldn't be happening, or there's some failure going on, or there's someone to blame, something has made this happen. And I think that just draws us further into the chaos, rather than finding that capacity in that moment to sort of step back and truly, see this with different eyes. So for example, go ahead.
Can I just stop just real quick? So I want to just, for everybody out there, and even for myself, to kind of make that into a point, is that when chaos is going on is not the time to look for fault. Like, oh, this is because my mother didn't teach me how to deal with this. Or, this, I don't know, me when I was teaching, this child's lazy and that's why they're not completing this work. Like, It's not the time to blame somebody else.
Absolutely. And this, like, for example, for me saying, wait, this wasn't in my training. No one told me about, a child going into this tantrum, like a totally out of control behavior. That's just going to draw me further into it. And so these kinds of events can actually be the stimulus for figuring out a different way to deal with it, or to understand it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I like, we want to talk about calm, creating calm. And it's not an ideal, but it's also not, the chaos is reality. And anyway, I had, I didn't have much in the way of strategies with, for example, these two events, but they were certainly a stimulus on the other hand, I did have to do something is the thing. And that, this
Yeah.
is,
So what did you do?
yeah.
I'm like, you don't have the answers, so you just have to act without the answers, which a lot of people are we all find ourselves in that situation. If you're never finding yourself in that situation, something's probably wrong with what's going on. You know, because
Well,
it's
yeah,
always something new,
there's
right?
always something new. And this is just your opportunity
Yeah.
to learn something. With my child, my own child, it was really funny because I didn't know what to do. And I don't know why I ended up doing this, but I went and I just ran into the kitchen. I filled a cup of water and I threw it in his face. And talk about later when I read Montessori saying, interrupt the dictation, I went, oh my gosh, well, that was the way to interrupt it. I just tossed the water in his face and he was so absolutely startled. Everything just stopped. He stopped. And I won't say he got calm, but he certainly was just like so surprised. And it gave me the moment to say, let's wait, like, wait, what's going on? Talk to me. Don't have to yell. Talk to me. Tell me what's happening. And it did. It was just like, and so that was like this this weird lesson for me, proto lesson for this idea of interrupting a behavior. Now, I'm not recommending that people throw glasses of water in children's faces, but it was my son, so, and no one else was around. So
that's like a light dose of Xanax, what you just did. It's like I'm flipping out, and then somebody throws some water in my face instead of having to take a pill or something,
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, and then of course, for me, it became like, I don't want this to ever happen again. So what's been going on? That kind of follow through for myself. With the child in my classroom, though, I really, there's all the other children around and my assistant is watching, I just ended up picking her up, kicking and screaming, and carried her to the school office and literally just deposited her in the office and went back. So I'm not saying, I'm not quite sure I feel really good, but I think at the moment that was the best I could do. I have no idea what happened to her there, except I do know that sometime later she was very calmly escorted back to my classroom. And I, of course, again, lots to learn from that, but sometimes that was what I had.
Can I'm so curious now, and I'm sure a lot of teachers and some parents, but what's your take on this? I've heard different people say, oh, Montessori says this, but the idea of if you have a chaotic child, as long as he's not like socking another child in the face or something, should you always solve it in the classroom, or is it okay to take a child out of the classroom and give them to somebody else, like what you did? What's your take on that? That's
such a great question. And of course, there's not going to be a single answer. But my goal, my number one strategy was to solve this here in our community. This is happening in our community. The rest of the community is observing, being affected by it. And that would be my number one goal. Let's solve this here. And so that became this sort of limitless strategizing, which I'm probably still do today. There are times, however, where removing the child from the situation can be the most effective strategy. And that's the art, is figuring out when is that. But I never wanted to ever just take the child and deposit him or her. Say, here, you take care of, somebody else is going to take care of them. So what I found is to leave with, like, take the child out to maybe something in the environment is what's stimulating it. And so we leave and we sit and talk in a calm place, or we just spend some time, or just, and this is where we just go outside and start looking at what's growing. I don't know. They're young children, and so they're easily distracted. The biggest thing, as we were saying, is that you don't contribute to the chaos. You bring the calm. And that is a really huge challenge, no matter how experienced you are. because it's, it doesn't feel like a calm situation. We have to bring the calm, if that makes
So
sense.
maybe, yeah, no, and bringing the calm, I think, can be kind of a theme here. So, it's easy to say that. Like, I feel at this point, we can bring the calm, and it almost seems natural. And even kind of the most chaotic situations, but it's hard to get to that point. So what would you say? I mean, maybe you have another example where it's like you had a chaotic situation and you brought the calm, like, I don't know, like an OG, like the bomb, did you have a situation that might, shed some light on that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, but just the number one lesson I learned from these kinds of events in the early years was prevention. The greatest cure is prevention. Just don't get there. And so my first level would be to recognize when something could be leading to that chaos before it's exhibited. And that is part of the art of what we do. I'm trying to think of some other examples, like, so I sometimes think maybe this is a good way to look at it, is the whole idea of freedom within limits, where we establish limits, and within those limits, the children can be free, but they're not free to cause, this sort of disturbance. Now that sounds like a great theoretical point. How does it actually happen in real life? So I was thinking from what you said, I know I've talked about before about, the collective stage, and when everybody is sort of out of control, no one's like really in that focused individual activity thing where, Montessori speaks very eloquently about this, where you actually sound like you're just a conventional preschool teacher in a lot of ways, because you're in charge. You be in charge, that creates limits and establishes the expectations. So it could be, okay, so here's an example. 1990, some people might recall, if you're old enough, that was the first Gulf War, started in January of 1990. I think it was that year. And my environment was functioning super high level. Everything was great until this war started, and everyone was talking about the war. It was on the TV constantly. It was on the radio constantly. Children actually knew of relatives who were going off to the Gulf to fight in this war. I don't know exactly how much the causality is here, but all I know is that within a month or two of this war starting, my environment fell apart. It was chaos all the time. And I'm like, what am I going to do here? There was just suddenly all I could think of is like that the limits were too broad. And when the limits are really broad, the children lack security. And all I could think of was that I need to help create order. That's what you make out of chaos, is order. And all I could think of, and I don't know why this came to me, but I thought they all need their own assigned table and chair. So, their own workspace. But this would give them grounding and give them.
What were the ages? The
This
ages in this class?
3 to 6.
3 to 6. Okay.
The whole range. And I brought in my head of school, and I told her this insight I had this plan, and she was like, okay. And I was like, this is not Montessori, right? This is not freedom of choice. It's not using my own workspace. But I was now like 8 years into my experience, so I was kind of trusting my instincts here. Anyway, we spent a weekend or so figuring out enough tables and chairs for every child. It meant completely reorganizing a lot of the environment. It meant finding tables and chairs, and then organizing them. They all had to be organized in like groups of 4, because I didn't have enough space for that many. And I'm thinking the whole time, oh my gosh, they are going to be so mad at me. These children are going to come in and they're going to be like, what are you doing? So, but anyway, we got it all set up, and I made the strategies with my assistant and how we were going to do this. And we made these beautiful little name tags that went on the tables, and we actually figured out who was sitting where with whom. Did a lot of like groups of 4 where all 4 children were a different age, from like 3 to 6 or whatever. And we met them at the door, and I said, I have something to show you today. I'm going to show you where you can do all of your work today. And I took them in and showed them each, and I said, you can just sit here while I greet someone else. And so all the children are just sitting there at their tables, looking around, like, and this is again that interruption, like, whoa, like, this is not what we expect. But no one got mad at them because we were calm. We were in a calm way, not a reactive mode. And anyway, and I just, we sort of talked, and I said things like, well, whatever you want to get, you can go get it, but you can work at it at this table. If you want to work on the floor, just come and check in, and we'll help you find a place to put your mat. And they had to have snack at their table. If they didn't know what anything else to do, this is where they sat while they were just, sitting around, whatever. I thought I just couldn't believe that this was going to work, narrowing the limits this much. The calm was incredible. They got to work. They were making choices. All the conversations were nice and, quiet and calm. There was plenty of that, getting their snack whenever they wanted it and bringing it to their table. I was like, wow. I mean, it was incredible. It was like an overnight change in the behavior of this group. And and I thought, well, we'll do this for about a week, and then we'll figure out, we did that until the end of the school year in June.
Wow.
They were, and I mean, it was so calm and so, it was an incredible, everything went back to like even better than what I would look for in a normalized classroom, so to speak. I cannot fully explain it, except to say that there are no absolute strategies. And sometimes the very most effective thing to do might feel like the opposite of what our work is. But in this case, that was the appropriate response. And it had all that positivity. And of course, when we all came back the next year, it was back to the normal, space and everything.
So, man, there's so much coming to me with this. So one thing that jumps out to me is that you said that when you were doing this, and just by the way you were speaking, it wasn't like, so welcome back, kids. We were all out of control. So we're going to be sitting in, it was, we've got this special place where you are going to be able to do your own work. And you brought the calm, so to speak.
Yes. And it's very much like, let me show you, not like, we're not talking about what you were doing. We're not talking about how you, it's like, let me show you. It's just like grace and courtesy in a way.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do this, this particular scenario, so to speak.
Yeah.
The fact that, then you have to reflect on whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Observe.
And decide, is this getting the results that I'm looking for? And it's not even what you're looking for, what I'm looking for. It's what is the best for these children. It is not good for children to be in a chaotic state. They don't want to be in a chaotic state. They need calm to do their work of growing and existing, but they aren't the ones that can change the environment. We are.
Yeah. So what's wild about this is that you basically found a solution that would seemingly be the exact opposite of what, quote, Montessori would be like. And
absolutely.
What's really fascinating to me about this is I've found, particularly now in more modern times where people on social media, let me get my little Instagram post that says 3 things you need to do if you want. And people are like almost desperate for like, this is the answer. And what you said, like, surely this was not in any Montessori album that we got in AMI, or if you're an AMS, your albums or whatever you got trained in. Like, the point of this is you need to be ready to adapt on the spot and use your mind or use what you observe. So I just find this to be like, to bring that calm in the chaos, like you're not going to find the calm in a manual, right? I mean, or
yeah. I mean, yes, I'm agreeing with you. You're not going to, you can find, it's like our essence gives us a context within which to observe and strategize and respond, but there is no formula. Maybe that's what. And so this to me was like, I absolutely did. I violated the formula. I would have been embarrassed if someone else knew I was doing assigned seating. I'm not embarrassed by it now because it was what those particular children at that particular moment needed and what they thrived on. And so even now, I'm not saying, oh, this is what you should do. Give them all assigned seating.
Yeah.
Now, what we need to do is sort of what is an option here? And of course, if it hadn't worked, we would have stopped. We would have just like, okay, and today you can choose any place you want to be.
Which
so,
I'm sure you've had a million times where that happened. Like you tried something out and it's like, oh, this is not going to work, and you had to adapt.
Exactly.
But this is so weird because I know we're saying this, and this is what I found to be the core, is to be able to adapt. Now we've got our albums, we've got our history, we know, the Montessori material. So it's not like if you didn't have Montessori materials, it might be a little bit more challenging to have them in seats. But what is it that you think? I don't know if you have an answer for this or a thought, but why is it so hard for so many people, and I would include myself at times, but definitely when I was an early teacher, to just be comfortable with knowing that you're not going to have all the answers, and on the spot, that's the point. You have to be open to adapting, open to getting things wrong, open to experimenting. But what makes that so hard for teachers and definitely parents with their own children?
Yeah. Boy, that is such a great question. And I wouldn't presume to know for every single person, but I think a general answer to that, a general insight into that, why is it so hard for us? Why we get so agitated, so to speak, and contribute to the chaos. And I think it comes back to what Montessori identified as our adult anger and pride. We want to do everything right. We want everything to be perfect. We get angry when the evidence is we aren't doing everything right. That's how we interpret it. So we get angry, and it's our pride that's affected. Like, oh, like I said, what if somebody saw this going on? I would be judged. And then we also, out of that anger and pride, we're kind of urged to look for outside circumstances, someone else to blame or some circumstance to blame. So we can externalize it and it not be us. And that's just not going to take us anywhere to have that anger and that pride. There's lots of reasons. There's plenty of candidates for the source of those outside circumstances. Like for me, in that one particular instance, I could have blamed the government, the radio, the parents who were listening to NPR all day and had the news on all day, and the children were being exposed to all that. I could have blamed all that, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing I can do in the moment about all those circumstances. And it's certainly, I can't blame the children. And I think we do sometimes even get into like blaming. They are not the source of the conditions that are challenging us. So we fall into that. And then eventually we blame ourselves, and we say, oh, I should know better, or I shouldn't, or we might blame our form of, the quote unquote method. But none of that is going to solve the chaotic situations we find, and that's why Montessori, she said the solution is patience and humility. That's what's, to make for our adult work, these aren't easy, but that is really what we have to do. And so we have to cultivate that patience and that humility. They're not weaknesses, they're incredibly strengths. They clear the air. They clear our vision to see the situations in total, to see what's really going on here, and think clearly in the moment. So cultivating for ourselves. So again, it's like if the problem seems to be in the group or in a particular child, the only place we really have control is over ourselves. And so start with yourself. How am I responding? How might I be contributing? Anyway, I just think that
Ginni, I'm just wondering if the people that are listening right now see any analogies, because what's jumping out at me immediately is like what you're saying is, don't blame others, bring the calm, realize you're angry. And I'm like, this sounds like some advice that maybe we need as adults more politically in our country. It's like you're literally naming what's happening between the sides, the extreme sides in our country right now.
I agree. And that's why this is more than just, Montessori education, whatever we're going to call it, is way more than just a particular age group and a particular kind of, organization of the environment. It's about being human. I mean, anger and pride are the foundations of chaos, and they're dangerous because we become the source of the chaos, and then that opens the doors to harming others, psychologically or even physically. So it's just like this, that's going to just continue the cycle. But patience and humility will be the foundations of our own calm. And you start with being patient with yourself.
Can I ask you something? Because
Sure.
I always have this question about pride and humility, right? I might have to do an episode on pride at some point, because in my sense of pride, I think pride gets a weird rap, because you take somebody who's like, I am always right, I'm the best. I'm not going to name names, but that type of personality that like, I can do no wrong, everybody else is screwed up. That to me seems like an over, like a self-absorbed, and and when I think of pride, I think of like a child who just for the first time wrote his name in cursive. He's so proud of himself. So you know what I'm saying? I want to make the distinction between the two. How do you view that? So I'm not like diminishing the pride of a child or even an adult that did something like, I just built my gate, my house. I'm just so proud of it, but it's not like, this is the best gate you've ever seen in your life and nobody could do this, So,
well, I think you're making
how do you distinguish
really
the two?
important. It's a really important point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because, and again, I don't know what word Montessori used that was translated into pride. It could be that in her Italian, there are distinctions in words. We don't have that distinction that I'm aware of in English. So I think it's really important. By pride, what I mean is this sort of, it's a response to what's going on that's an obstacle, that creates a barrier between, say, me and another person, me and solution, me and strategizing. And it is about ego. It is about, maybe even things like narcissism or, so I think it's, we don't have to use any particular word, but what I am meaning is when we let this feeling about what we're doing, it's not genuine. For example, I'm not standing there going, I'm so proud of these children who are in absolute chaos right now. And I'm not proud of myself. What am I? I am feeling threatened. It's the anger is leading me to I feel threatened. I'm liable to be judged. I don't want to be wrong. I need to know everything in advance. I can't ever appear to not know what to do. That's what I'm talking about. That's what becomes the obstacle. And of course, whether that leads to anger about the situation or the anger leads to that feeling, I think that's why Montessori put them together. Definitely, when she counters the pride that she's talking about with humility, she's talking about an ego that is willing to put itself into service to the betterment of others, or to the betterment of this group, or the best interests of this group, and to recognize, humility does recognize those accomplishments. Absolutely. And so anyway, I think when you think about the substitutes of the patience and the humility, they become the foundations for our calm. And I guess one of us has to figure out for ourselves what that means.
Yeah. And I think what you brought out that I think is huge is just in those moments when I'm blaming somebody else, it's this guy. If we could really dig into our emotions, and you're saying, I'm feeling threatened, if you could get to that, but it's, that emotion is so often buried under anger, as you said, or this sense of, I feel amazing because instead of being like, do you really feel amazing right now?
Right.
And really digging to that threat.
Yeah. And of course, that can lead us to do things that might even appear to have a positive outcome, but they're not our ideal outcome. I worked with a teacher consulting once, and she had a very calm classroom. If you just looked at it, you're like, oh, wow, this is really working. But then because I was consulting, I was there for quite a while and getting to observe. And what she was doing was she was completely controlling the children's activities. And somehow they were going along with it, but it wasn't at their, there's a difference between when you liberate children to control themselves versus when you are successful at controlling them, imposing your control.
Yeah.
And so she could have been very proud of her classroom because it looked good, but I had to have a very difficult conversation with her about how she was achieving that appearance in her, and that it was an appearance, not a reality. And one of the best things that, and I learned this from, oh my gosh, I forget who, a very elder, no longer with us, AMI person, but she would, when she was working with a teacher, her goal was, she'd observe and she'd see how things are going. And then she would invite the teacher to step outside with her as if, they had to have this little conversation, but she would always position herself where she could see the room over like the teacher's shoulder. And if it all fell apart, then she knew that this was the adult who was controlling it, as opposed to the children, like ideally, that we don't advise this on a lot of levels, but ideally the adults should be able to leave the room. If you really have, the ultimate sort of Montessori environment, they should be able to leave the room and nothing changes.
Yeah.
And until you reach that point, your work isn't finished in terms of this level of like creating the calm. They're dependent on you for it, I guess, is the thing.
Yeah, I'm happy you raised too with this, when we're talking about calm and chaos, is that if we reach the quote calm, but it's just an appearance, then we've really, we failed ourselves. And it's, you talked about, doing this for the children and for the community, but there's an element of, if you're faking it for some trainer to come in and see you, or you're faking it so that the parents see calm, but you really feel like you're a wreck, that's horrible for everybody. Not, the kids, you, the community, like nobody's really growing if that's the case.
That is so true. And one of the clues to that is if you are controlling it, I'm going to predict you end every day exhausted.
Yeah.
You are working so hard. And, so I would say that if you end every day exhausted, right there, that's a point of reflection. What is exhausting me? What is it that's keeping, because exhaustion is not calm either. You're in this tension all the time. And, we should, I think I've said this before, but we should have fun. That's the question we should be asking ourselves. Am I having fun? Are the children having fun? What does that look like? What does that mean? It shouldn't be draining and exhausting and, leaving us, almost debilitated with it. That's a different kind of chaos.
Yeah. I think that different kind of chaos, if it's your classroom looks calm, your home looks calm, but you're internally feeling like a mess or exhausted. Yeah. That's a recipe for some real trouble, real chaos.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's just so, even when, you use two words, anger and pride, replace them with two words, patience and humility. But what that means, there's whole dimensions to it. And I even think those dimensions are different for different individuals, different groups, different social times of, on the schedule, so to speak. It's life. I guess that's the thing, and life is not going to be this uniform, always do everything exactly the same every time and get the same outcome. That's not.
Yeah, and I, you saying in this life too, because I feel like there is a certain weightiness to all this. Like I'm sure there's people listening like, oh my God, but I do feel like a mess inside. So if we can just, and I've been there, I've been there, and I know just what a struggle. I mean, I remember days when I was just like, did you ever have this, Ginni, when you're looking out the class and you're like, I don't know, like internally, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I was just, but outside you're still trying to keep the cool, and,
Yeah.
and I feel like if somebody could have just in that moment come up to me like, just chill out, man. Let's hang out. Let's hang out with these kids today and have fun, as you said. I think it would have really helped.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. And there's another pride piece, the negative pride, where I don't want it to look like I don't know what I'm doing. Or I don't want it
Yes.
to look like I'm failing, or that, and instead it's just like gather everybody together, start playing a game. I know we've talked about this
Yeah.
before too. Just start playing a game, or let's all, depending on what your environment, let's go outside. Let's have a group snack today.
Yeah.
Just let's all sing a song, just something to interrupt. And if you can get yourself calm, I think that especially if you're talking about children under the age of 6, we are at a situation of, it's easy to interrupt it if you stay calm and just playful.
Yeah.
We would clear the room sometimes, just like put everything to the side and play this. I had this game where I would hold a tambourine and children would line up and they'd run and see if they could jump and hit the tambourine. It's like, you accumulate these kinds of activities that are fine. I mean, there's motor, large motor activity going on. There's the hand-eye coordination. There's the challenge, and they'd have to get in line, and suddenly they're willing to stand in line because they're each waiting for their turn and they're watching each child. And I'm saying like, okay, let's see what Jesse's going to do, and Jesse's like, put it up higher. I want to jump higher. It's like, okay, and I do, and he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Okay, go back and get in line. Try it again next time when your turn is here, and suddenly you've interrupted it and you're having fun and you're calm and you've had some time to think about what was going on. And you're thinking about, how am I going to transition out of here? And, what am I going to do differently? And
I love it.
Yeah. So it's that kind of, and that is, you're using a lot of energy, but it doesn't have to be exhausting. You can be tired. Tired is not exhausted.
Yeah. And I think for all of you that are actually feeling exhausted, I think that tambourine game, like, make your own and just, because if you can breathe and play a tambourine game of your own, like at the end of the day, we're just having fun with children, and children are having, so it's, I'm happy. I'm really happy you use that. And I think that might be, I know we're running a little bit long. So I like to use that because, man, if I would have just been like at that moment back in my day and said, Jesse, let's go play a tambourine game, and whatever game happened to be, that's it.
Yeah.
It would have chilled me out. It would have chilled the kids out, and that's it.
But
anyways, is there anything you want to get out more than what you've already offered, which has been great. I can't wait to share this with a few people out actually already. So, but is there anything else you want to throw in?
Well, yeah, just really quickly. I think that we have a tendency as adults, and maybe in our particular culture, I don't know, we're always looking for the recipe, the prescription, do this, and every time you will get this positive outcome. And I think that is, I think that is self-defeating, to think that there would be anything like that could just prescribe that, every time it will work with every child in every situation. And instead, we need to look at this sort of bigger picture of, I have to work at this. And it makes me think of like, okay, so you hurt your back, you go to the doctor and you want the doctor to fix it, right? Fix my back. And a wise doctor says, I can't fix this for you, but you can go to physical therapy. But what's the physical therapist going to do? Who's actually going to do the work? You are. They're going to give you very specific guidance on how to fix it for yourself through your own work and effort. And I feel like that's a more productive attitude to take. Like, I can fix this. I know a lot. We have a science and an art that we call Montessori education, and it has very reliable guidance for like how to approach things, not specific prescriptions, but the attitude to bring and the strategizing to do. And we, to understand this child at this age and what would work in this environment. And just to trust that you can increase just ever increasing knowledge and understanding of our work and guide us.
I feel like what you just said is like, we've got our albums, which is the doctor basically saying, here's what you can do. And then we've got to do the work daily.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But it's hard.
It's hard. But what I can say is when I started cultivating this kind of attitude, it got easier. And I don't mean that there weren't challenges, but it got calmer for me. I was just like, I just have to think about doing something. Okay, this didn't work. What can I do differently? Not what am I doing wrong? What can I do differently? And then strategize that, and then be a scientist. Did it work? Did it help? No. Okay, keep looking.
Yeah. Ginni, I've got to ask you this then, because I find this in doing a podcast here, and we're talking to a lot of people. Some people be first years, some people be fourth years, some parents are new. And it's like, when I think about this time, because as you said, it becomes easier. And to me, just to be direct, like physical therapy on my back is the hard stuff, because you got to continuously do it every day. And it's not something I super enjoy, like stretching all the time or something like that. But in the classroom or with my kids now, I do feel this calm, and I don't have the like, oh, this is actually hard when something comes up that's a little chaotic. It's more like, oh man, I wonder what I'm going to do. You know, like it's exciting. But to tell people that when they're like in their minds, they're like, holy shit, my whole world is falling apart. This kid. Yeah. Like, how do you talk to somebody when they're in that state? Because I know telling them, hey, well, it gets fun, and it's like, yeah, but it's not right now. I feel like I want to kill somebody, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, because that becomes then what I just said is a different kind of prescription. And
yeah, they feel like
it's not meaningful. I really appreciate that perspective. I think that, whoa, where would I start? I think the thing to do is to trust that that children want calm. Children need calm. They thrive in calm. They would not be in this chaos if there wasn't something going on that is contributing to it. And we don't have to be part of the contribution of that. We can, so trust that they don't want to act like this. I found that was a really helpful perspective. Like, this child doesn't want to be hitting. This child doesn't want to be tantruming. This child doesn't really want to, but that's what they know. And so that's why, you go back to that interruption, give them something else to focus all that energy and attention on. With young children, that is that, because they're not really set in their ways yet. I don't know. So I found all that kind of encouraging. And the other thing is just to be, this is going to come from the martial arts for me, but we have this phrase, to breathe, flow, and don't be concerned with outcomes. It's just like, be there, just keep breathing, flow with the situation. Don't be so concerned about the outcomes, but really, what am I going to do right now in this moment? Maybe you do need to take that child to the office this time. Maybe you do need to just stop everybody. Maybe you do need to just let it work itself out, if no one's getting hurt. And to just sort of trust that. And if we're going to, say we want to be the Montessori scientist and the Montessori artist, just keep increasing your knowledge and understanding that you bring to these moments. Read Montessori. Any chapter that has the word adult or teacher in it I found to be a great place to start. And then also, talk to your colleagues, talk to people, describe the situation in objective, neutral, confidential terms. Have you ever seen this? Has this ever happened to you? So, what did you do? What would you do differently? What happened when you did that? Collect more and more information and understanding to work from, so you don't feel like I just have to come up with it all on myself. It's not. We've all, plenty of people.
Yeah, we're all growing. All growing at something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love your perspective, Ginni. And I reach out to you, and if there's something that comes up with me, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Ginni is the person I reach out to, and you're bringing it. I love having you on. There's so much here. I feel like this is a gold mine. I have a few people I want to share it with already. I'm pumped. So thank you again so much for coming on.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I'm always happy, as you probably, I'm always happy to talk and share and listen and see what it is that people are looking for.